offseason, and they paid incredible dividends this year, so that we're talking about Hellebuck's Vezina possibilities. Whereas last year, people were talking about whether he'd be playing goal for the Moose this year potentially, right, or at the very least backing up at the NHL. And so people are quick to write off a goalie based on a very small sample size. Gibson is in the opposite direction. Gibson has had nothing but success. Like, look at his, even just looking at save percentage, right, which is a rough stat, but goodness, he's kept it very high, in the elite range for the last 2 seasons when he's been starter. And even before then, when he started a lot more sporadically, he'd never been below league average, or maybe like a single point below league average, which is a remarkable thing for someone that young. So he has all the talent in the world, and to wonder whether or not he's reached his potential, well, he's doing great now.
Yeah.
So you can't say he's just scratching the surface because he's doing great. And if he were just scratching the surface, we're looking at, a Dominic Hasek type of guy who's going to get better and better and better for the next 5 years, right, and then dominate the league. I will say this, though. Gibson's not motivated right now, I don't think. I mean, why would he be?
Yeah.
To change what's not broken. So if there are little weaknesses in his game or, bigger changes that he can make, right, he's not going to rebuild the way he plays goal because there's no motivation for him to do that. If he has a season like Hellebuyck had, maybe next season, God forbid, Gibson, he gets burned, all his weaknesses get exposed, and he gets burned on them, then he might be motivated to retool his game to make it even better, right? But it's a rare thing. So I think what you see from John Gibson right now is what you get. And the hope is, as he ages and as his athleticism, and it has to happen, as his athleticism diminishes, is he going to put the work in to revise his game so that he can play into his 30s as well as he did when he was in his 20s? Mm-hmm. That's a possibility. So I think expecting more from John Gibson at this point, it's unrealistic. He's given a lot, and he is an incredible tool set. But to imagine him maintaining the success throughout his career depends on what he's going to do when he loses a step.
Yeah, and the key thing that I think to remember, too, is he's still 24. There's plenty of time to figure out if he's going to be this type of guy for the rest of his career, if we're going to, like you said, see any of his weaknesses exposed in the coming seasons. But looking at another young goaltender right now who was considered the favorite for the Vezina at the mid-season rankings has now kind of fallen off. Where do you see Vasilevsky in the position for the Vezina right now? Do you think he's still a favorite just because of those mid-season rankings, or has he kind of fallen out of the picture?
Well, I thought of this when you talked about Kucherov. There's an anchoring effect, I think, that happens when a guy is touted at the first quarter, at the half, at the three-quarter mark as the person to beat. And people were voting, right? As anyone who is voting for anything does, you sort of see a trend, and it seems like there's momentum. Even though there's no momentum, it was just a bunch of people's opinions at different times. But it seems like there's momentum, and that carries forward to the end of the season sometimes. So you'll see guys get votes. The other year, I forget, it was the last year, the year before, but Dubnyk had a really strong start to the season. We thought, he's probably going to win the Vezina. And then really petered off to the point where he shouldn't have been in the conversation. Nevertheless, he still received a lot of votes, even though he wasn't in the top 3. And I think you're going to see that with the Hart this year. I think Kucherov is going to do very well if he doesn't win. And I think you're seeing that with Vasilevsky as well, who had an incredible beginning to the season. Won so many games, it looked like he might, challenge for a 48-win season to tie a record, or at least a 45-win season. He's petered off so much, though, relatively speaking, over the last stretch, that I think he's out of the top spot. Although I still think that he's going to garner, because of his wins, because he has 7 shutouts, which leads the league tied with Rene, I think he's probably still going to finish second in the voting.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like because of his play at the midseason point, he's going to get a lot of credit for what he had done up to that point. Before we get into your 3 finalists, I got to ask you, because you've done a lot of work on Carey Price, what has happened to Carey Price this season? I know Montreal as a team has just been awful, but is this just a one-off for Carey Price and it's more so team-oriented than individual, or is there something else going on?
A few things. So we'll focus on him first, then the team after. I think initially he was looking like he was just not himself pretty much from the start of the season. And that can happen. I mean, you could sputter out of the gate. I think it was last season. The Canadians went on a tear to begin the season, but his numbers were really pedestrian. He had a bit of a lull in the winter, and then come January, he was back on top again and managed to have it wasn't a Vezina-worthy season, but he managed to put himself in the conversation, sort of. This season, he started off poorly. The team also started off poorly, so they weren't putting up the massive number of goals they were last year. And things sort of went downhill from there. He didn't have the crispness and power that you're used to seeing in his game. He didn't have the technical fineness that you're used to seeing in his game. He looked tired. And as it turns out, he was on the IR for a long time early in the season, and they talked about he had fatigue. I mean, it was sort of a clinical matter of being chronically fatigued, and that's how he was playing. He was playing like a guy who was just totally unable to do the things that he knows his body can do because of that. So that was early. Then injury later. Then turning to the team has been early in the season. It was random, so it seemed like three defenders were standing around. A puck would hit two of them and go in the net. Price would be slightly off angle. A puck would hit the post and go in. So it seemed unlucky, but the defense corps in Montreal early in the season was a dog's breakfast. I mean, Weber, right? Yeah. Great. Petrie really found his game this season, was doing fantastic. But then the guys that got signed in the off season, I don't know who management thought they were getting, but these shouldn't have been the defensemen that were getting all this money. And so, they were playing regular minutes. A guy, Joseph from Junior, Mete, was, logging lots of minutes, which good for him. I mean, he's talented. He was solid. He'd earned that. But the fact that he can jump in and do that so unexpectedly points to a lot of problems with the Canadians' defensive depth early on. I don't know if they figured things out. I mean, Weber's gone now forever. But it was a combination of, I think, a really poor, not just defensive structure, but the personnel were probably below where they needed to be, which was far below where management thought they were based on what they were being paid. And then Price being not himself and apparently so fatigued, he could not handle what was being thrown at him. So we'll see. I mean, Price is now susceptible to injury. He's been concussed this season. He has a history of knee problems, right? And so it depends. If Price is healthy going forward, I mean, I could see him rebounding nicely. If he's not, it's going to be really hard for him to maintain the level of precision and power that he needs to play the game he does, especially behind that team.
Yeah, it's been a disappointing season for the Habs all year. I feel bad bringing it up, Mom. If you're listening, I'm sorry we brought up the Habs. I know it's a sore wound right now, but we got to do it. But I got to get the last thing here from me, at least, is I got to know who your three finalists are. At this point, I know things can change in the last little stretch here, but I think they're almost pretty much set. Who do you have as the three finalists and the eventual winner for the Vezina?
All right, so I can give you two lists if you want. The first one is the person who's probably actually going to win, and the two people who are going to get the next most votes. So I think at this point, it's René Toulouse. Yeah. He has an incredible record. I mean, he's lost, I think, like 9 games. I mean, it's ridiculous. He has, he's the heart and soul of that team again, in some sense, which almost no one expected. And he has the highest save percentage easily, 7 shutouts. He has the lowest goals against average among goalies who have played enough games. He is the clear favorite. He ticks all the boxes that GMs want. After that, I think the second spot's going to go to Vasilevsky. Lots of wins, still a great save percentage, great goals against average. He's the kind of goalie who can make saves. I mean, he made a couple of behind-the-back saves this year, right?
That is insane.
And people remember those things, right? I mean, those things matter a lot to people's sort of perception after the fact. So I think he's done enough to garner second spot. And then third, that's a bit more of a wild card, but I got to think that Connor Hellebuyck is in position to get that. He's behind a really good Jets team. He's played a lot of games. He has a lot of wins. And the narrative for Hellebuyck is excellent. I mean, he went from last year struggling to maybe being a backup goalie this year to leading his team and really forcing himself into this best goalie conversation. And the fact that he did the work himself, right, and it's been well documented how he changed and what he did, I think he's going to get a lot of credit for that. So that's my three. If you're betting on this, those are the names that I would go with.
And what about your three? You said you had another list as well.
The
three you kind of believe, yeah.
The people who have really, who maybe have earned it the most, in my opinion, and looking at the statistics that we have available, I think Stu Rene would be at the top of that list. It's at least very close. So Rene or I think Rene maybe still tops that list. Bobrovsky comes second, and then right on his heels is John Gibson. So I think it's 1, 2, 3. Gibson has an excellent showing with regard to his advanced stats and his basic stats. The only thing that holds him back, a couple of things. One thing that's holding him back is his even strength numbers tend to take a dip, whereas the other two, Bobrovsky and Rene's, don't. Gibson's still above average at even strength, but their numbers are a bit higher. And if you need to break a tie, even strength numbers for me tell you a little bit more, right? They remove the goalie from the situation somewhat, and they look more at what you can do outside of the that very difficult time on the PK. But I'd have those three as my top three. I would certainly have Gibson in. It's close, but I think I'd have him as my third.
I would love to hear him get some consideration. That's kind of where I sit on that. To kind of just, I thought of two, like the two-parter question. It's nothing crazy, but who's a goaltender you feel in the NHL that doesn't get enough recognition? That's a young guy coming up that us fans should be looking out for.
A lot of young guys are getting recognition now, which is good. I think that's it's a relatively new thing. We established that's a area for so long. And a guy like Lundqvist, right, has deserved all these accolades, and a guy like Luongo is still playing excellent, right, unexpectedly. But right now, I would be watching UC Saros in Nashville. He is probably my favorite goalie to watch right now. He's 5'11", maybe, or he's 5'10". Depending on sort of what, when you look at what his height was and whether or not it's been inflated. But a really, really, really small goalie with incredible positioning. He gets to where he needs to be so quickly. You have to rewatch what he's done in order to see how he's done it. He's the epitome of a little guy who can move, but he does that so well and with so much power that he covers as much net sometimes as the gargantuan Pekka Rinne. When the two of them are standing next to each other in practice or before a game, it's hilarious because there's almost a 10-inch height difference between these guys. But Soros, for my money, is a guy to keep your eye on. He's very young. He's in Pekka's shadow right now, but he could potentially, right within the next year, if he were on a different team, or if Rinne starts to falter a little bit, he could be a guy that could step up and just starting right away, in my opinion.
I mean, who better to take after than Pekka Rinne? As we were talking about him, he just got a 35-save shutout tonight. So Pekka Rinne gets another one.
You can't. I mean, now he leads the league in shutouts, right? I mean, you can't argue with these basic numbers.
And then to wrap up the questions here, just the second half of that was: is there any prospects maybe outside the NHL, or doesn't have to necessarily be overseas, but even in the minors that we should be keeping an eye out for coming up through whatever team in the NHL?
I'm not a deep prospect guy, but one guy I like who I've seen in the NHL, albeit briefly, and have heard an awful lot of good stuff about is Comrie coming up in Winnipeg. As though Winnipeg didn't have enough riches in goal right now, with Hellebuck really coming into his own this season, Comrie is maybe, I don't know if he's a top prospect, but he's certainly one of the top young netminders who he's not ready yet to start on a team. But he has all the tools. And he, like Soros, only bigger, his positional play is absolutely fantastic. You look at a guy like that and you see the sort of the future of what goaltending will look like, technically speaking. And I know styles are different, and people don't always have to play the game the same. but this guy is so crisp and efficient. It's remarkable. He's definitely someone that I would be